Hello and welcome to another HR Grapevine and Sage People sponsored webinar on what is a rather resplendent Wednesday morning. Today's webinar is called People Analytics, 5 Secret Steps to Getting It Right. I'm here today with Gwanya Shunesi, who is Manager of Product Marketing at Sage People. And I am, of course, Daniel Cave, Managing Editor of Executive at Grapevine. So before we kick off today's webinar in earnest, with Gwanya taking you through the main wedge of the content, I thought we'd take a little look at what analytics actually means, because it seems to be one of those buzz phrases or workarounds in the modern business sphere in which people are wielding the word without really understanding what the actions of it mean. I mean, who owns it? What are we measuring and why? And are we actually just gathering data without turning it into information? So when I was thinking through this morning, I was looking at what the word actually means itself. It might not surprise you to know that it has both Greek and Latin origins, from the words ana, which means to loosen or unfashion, or the words li, to cut apart. And I think essentially this is what analytics is doing, is some kind of corporate vivisection in which we're looking at what the base elements of our company are doing, cutting apart the different functions that we're using, or hopefully towards a better solution. So before we get stuck in the past, I'm going to hand over to Ronya, who will take you through today's agenda. So introducing what people science is, the context in which we use it, then some very, I guess, easy to use steps to getting people analytics right, and then what we can do afterwards with, of course, our usual question and answer session at the end, in which I'm sure you'll have some questions to press Grania with. So without further ado, I am going to hand over to Grania.
Hello, hi. So I'm one of the global product marketing managers at Sage. So a little bit about me, I'm very passionate about technology and how it disrupts our everyday lives. So it's really shaping our world and our economy, and I've been lucky enough to work in the tech industry for several years now, and I'm really looking at ways technology can help businesses achieve rapid growth. And more recently, I joined Sage Business Cloud People, which is a modern global cloud HR and people platform that helps fast-growing multinational organizations transform not only how they acquire new employees, but how they retain, manage, and engage the workforce throughout the entire employee journey. So that's enough about me. I'm going to go straight into the context of why this topic is so important, and just talk a little bit about the world of work and how it's changing. So your people's expectations and the way they work is changing quite a lot recently. So employees are more diverse, mobile and technology savvy than ever before. HR processes are changing from focusing on transactions to knowing and engaging people. Just as sales and marketing teams use data to develop actionable and informed insights about their customers, you need to do the same in HR to know your people. Everything from attracting and keeping the best talent to creating better workplace experiences and increasing employee engagement and productivity depends on making smarter decisions. And these really rely more on actionable insights than ever before. These are only possible through accurate HR data and analytics. So this is why this topic is super important. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some research that we did. So Sage spoke to 500 HR and people leaders and asked what their most common challenges that they were facing. So some of the key stats: only 29% of people think their company puts their people first, but interestingly, 55% of senior managers think they do put their people first. Another really interesting stat that came out of the research was 92% of companies don't get the insights that they need, which is very relevant for today's topic. And why that's so important is because it's really about getting talent through the door, keeping that talent, and being able to impact your business's bottom line. And when we spoke to HR leaders, 80% of them can't get top talent through the door. So actually recruiting and retaining top talent is a global skills crisis at the moment, which I'm sure you're aware of. And 70% of HR teams can't keep high flyers, so top performers tend to leave the business relatively quickly. And then another interesting stat is that almost 50% of the HR leaders that we spoke to don't think that they have the right people within the business doing the job that they want them to be doing. So today there are probably, well, 5 or 6 working generations within an organisation. So there's increasingly this contingent workforce, including contractors and gig workers, from baby boomers to millennials and part-time freelancers. Employers must really embrace an evolving and diverse mix of expectations that come from managing such a workforce. So the workplace itself is really changing, and people interact with technology in every aspect of their personal lives, from shopping on a mobile app to unlocking their home with a voice recognition. You know, we've got Google Home, we've got Alexa. Now, expectations in the workplace are also changing, and it means that we need to rethink how we engage our workforce today. Advances in cloud and work-based technology has led to an increasing dependence on digital technology, which means there is a greater need for securing and protecting people's data. So this is especially true with new regulations like the GDPR, where failure to comply could be extremely costly. So there's lots to think about in the world of work and how it's changing and how technology is impacting those changes. So on this slide, I'm going to talk a little bit about engagement and productivity. There's a huge issue with the lack of employee engagement. As you can see on the left hand of the slide, the research here shows that over a number of years now, people are typically not fully engaged at work. They're not motivated or giving their all for what they're doing. So only 1 in 3 people are reported to be fully engaged and motivated. So that basically means that 1 in 3 people are reported not to be doing their best, not to be engaged. They're potentially not very happy. They're just not being very productive. So that's quite an interesting but startling data point to think about. So when you think about your team and your colleagues, do you get a similar result? If you've surveyed them and asked how engaged they were at work, do you think you'd find a similar result? It's questions like these that organisations and HR leaders need to start thinking about within the workplace. So we're going to look at some data around productivity and productivity growth. So the chart on the right-hand side of this slide is from the Department of Statistics in the US, and it shows that while GDP has fluctuated over time, if you look at the trend overall, it's pretty flat for productivity, and if anything, it's in decline towards the end of this chart here, as you can see. So disengaged employees cost the US between 450 to 550 billion pounds per year in lost productivity. So if you look at the last few years, it's actually negative, and we clearly have a problem, and it's not working, and we're not getting the best results out of our people. So this raises some interesting questions like, why is that? One of the things that has started to become evident is that we need to understand more around motivation and engagement, and we really need to understand the importance of experiences around all of this. So people insights are a problem. As I mentioned earlier, 92% of companies we spoke to struggle to gain strategic insight from people data. This is a big challenge, even though the expectations of employees and the changes in technology have driven a fundamental shift in the world of HR and people. Traditional HR processes and HCM vendors are no longer fit for purpose because they cannot adapt quickly enough to these changes, and businesses and people leaders know this, yet they're not ready to do anything about it because they lack either the people insights required to make smarter decisions. So as you can see here, 83% of HR leaders believe that they should make decisions based on data and analytics. However, only 37% of HR leaders say people decisions are actually based on data and analytics within their organization. So many companies still struggle to solve the fundamental challenge of providing basic people metrics readily and quickly, apart from the basic sort of insights that they want to glean, something like headcount reports. But when we asked our HR leaders in this survey, fewer than 50% can actually deliver same-day metrics for all other commonly required people reports, such as time to hire, so the time in which it takes to hire someone into a new role, top and bottom performers, so who isn't performing very well, who are your best performers, who are actually driving the company forwards, high potential employees, what are your skill gaps, can you actually call that out across your different departments, attrition levels, so overall churn, and flight risk, so who is likely to leave soon and why. Okay, so I'm going to pass back over to Dan at this point. So we are going to answer the first poll.
Brilliant. So from what Gwanya said so far, we've got a first poll, and that is, do you gain key insights into your people by measuring and analysing what matters to your organisation? So you can see the polls come up on your screen if you just click one of the multiple choice answers, and then it should go to the end. So do you gain key insights into your people by measuring and analysing what matters to your organisation? Yes, no, or unsure. I was going to leave it on the screen for another 10 seconds or so, give everybody a chance to vote. I can see most of you almost have now, and then we can put the results on the screen. So it should be on your screen now. So from you gain key insights into your people by measuring and analysing what matters to your organisation. The majority of you have actually said yes, which I guess is positive, so 54%. There's still almost a third saying no, and then there's 15% of you that are unsure. Gwanya, is there a comment you'd like to add to this?
So as we talked about earlier, that our survey results do show that 92% of HR leaders and companies we spoke to really struggle to gain strategic insights from people data. So HR is definitely not short on data, though some areas may fall short maybe on quality. So in theory, you can dig up some interesting insights and revelations, but is it insights that really matter to your organization, that can actually make impactful decisions to drive the business forwards, which I think is probably where people are either struggling with that or unsure if they can actually make those impacts on the business. Okay, cool. So that's the context. Now we're going to talk a little bit about people science. So I'm going to talk about it in a bit more detail. To improve performance and productivity in today's world of work, companies need to really transform the way they both manage and engage their workforce. So they need to do their best work and how to make them more productive. And success comes from having the visibility and insights they need to really know their people, just as well as a company would know their customers. And this really relies on people science. And what this actually means is just applying data-driven approaches to improve the visibility you have of your workforce and how you both manage and engage your workforce. It's about understanding people and their behaviour in your company and generating more actionable insights about your people. So the result is that you can actually make smarter business decisions. You can design great workforce experiences and ultimately improve engagement, productivity, and the bottom line, which is company performance. So to give you a bit of an example, after years of forcing job candidates to endure endless rounds of interviews and tests, Google actually used data to discover that after the fourth interview, every following interview is largely a waste of time. And I think typically today we definitely have a shorter round of interviews, but what they did by discovering this through using data, they streamlined their recruiting, and it also helped the company to understand what management factors led to the best job performance. So based on these insights from its people science work, Google wrote its manifesto on leadership, which is a really interesting read if you get a chance to have a look at that. So People Science Explained. It's estimated that over 98% of all information in the world is now stored digitally. So this data is created on a daily basis, for example, in CRM systems, online browsing, social media, but like most information, it only means something if it can be analysed. People science is a way that businesses can use data, analytics, and actionable insights to understand their people better and why their workforce behaves the way that it does. This gives an insight into how people interact within a particular work environment or situation and how this affects systems and performance. And people science allows companies to make better people decisions. It's just like how a company would know their customers by looking at their CRM using browser data, as I mentioned, or proactively identifying patterns and trends in finance or operational data to make savings and efficiencies across the company. People science and people scientists do the same, but with HR and people related information. And this quote on the screen, so people science is focused on actionable data. Everything else is just noise. And I think that's the key message that I'd like everyone to take away today, is that there's a lot of data. Don't let big data headlines fool you. You don't need a massive workforce. You don't need years of data. What you choose to measure, the accuracy with which you measure it, and the insights you draw from your findings are all far more important than the size of your data set. Okay, so people science in action. Here, some examples of the types of business and people questions that people science can help address and answer. So first of all, I'm going to pick on retention of talent. So in the race for talent, hiring managers begin to ask questions of the efficiency of their hiring strategy, such as where are my most successful hires coming from? How effective is my employee referral program? Traditionally, answers have been found in pooling data manually from spreadsheets or perhaps relying on outdated recruitment software. And two issues exist with these methods. With the majority of spreadsheets containing errors, the reliability of the data provides is just uncertain. And secondly, questions are often asked in isolation, so without reference to the complete hiring process. So have they got the bigger picture within their grasp, or are they just looking at something in isolation which might not actually give them the sort of true picture? So with the global talent pool shrinking, recruitment must become more efficient. And if you're keeping an eye on the HR and people space, the technology developments around recruitment and the recruitment process is definitely where we're seeing a lot of people coming up, and this is a big topic. The retention of talent is a KPI that also indicates the job stability of the company. This allows you to learn about the average employee retention in the company, and it's also linked to other factors such as the remuneration of the labour climate, in addition to the cost of losing an employee. The loss of talent will force you to spend time and money to recruit a new individual. And an index of high staff turnover implies high costs for the employer. The rate of retention of talent is calculated by comparing the number of workers who join the company in a specific period versus those who stayed during the same period. So just looking at recruitment alone and how people science can help, this carries a lot of questions and a lot of insights which can help organisations make better investments. And attracting and hiring and retaining new employees is a really big cost saving centre for an organisation. So if you can shave any time off that, any costs off that, it's going to make a big impact to an organisation's bottom line. The next question that I'm going to look at here is the duration in a position. So many employees' losses are closely related to the time that they keep in the same position. So if you've been in a position for a long time without any promotion or, some sort of remuneration or encouragement in some way, many employees tend to look for new opportunities outside of the company. And you can calculate the average time it takes for an employee to ascend by counting the number of months it takes each employee with the same charge and dividing the result by the total number of employees in the company. And this can give you some insight into how long a position is held for before someone starts to think about leaving, and you can start to look at flight risk. And it's questions like these that will just give you insights into your employment duration and how important this is to keep an eye on. So absenteeism is another good indicator to look at. This indicator measures the absence of employees due to delays or sick leave or excused or unexcused absences. And this indicator helps predict the number you could be expecting. So based on the average value of the hours worked, the impact of absenteeism in the company costs can be quantified. Again, this is just another way of bringing cost savings to your organisation. So can you minimise absenteeism? Can you see a pattern? Is there a reason behind this pattern? Is it something to do with that division or the management of that division? So it's just looking at behind the numbers, what are the reasons why something might be happening? And as you can see, just from me talking through a few of these questions that we've got on the screen, a company and HR teams can start to open up a massive can of worms, and it's very important to monitor only the things that really matter to your organisation. So don't waste time on indicators that might not contribute anything to your company, but these are just examples of some things that you can start to think about and put into action. So again, from our Becoming a People Company report here, we've asked our 500 HR and people leaders, did they know certain KPIs across their organisation? So the key here is to really ensure decisions relating to hiring and employee development are based on proven criteria. So companies who understand the benefit of this analysis, coupled with the way in which workforce metrics influence their bottom line and help to drive and predict future success, will have the edge over their competitors. So do you know your company's headcount, vacancy fill rate, flight risk? Is this something you need to build a report around, or is this something you report on regularly? Do you have goals you want to achieve to improve? So you know by the end of the year that you want to close your skill cap. Have we achieved our goal of upskilling our teams by the end of this financial year? Do questions like these leave you a bit worried because you can't actually answer those questions, or are you quite confident that you can get to that data and use that data and work with other business leaders around the organisation? So I think the other thing that a key message to take away is, while HR data is super important, it shouldn't be used in isolation. You should work with other leaders and management around the organisation to really understand what KPIs will help them understand their teams better and help influence their decisions. So it might be different across different departments depending on what you're looking at. And by working directly with other leaders, you can work out the answers together in order to make a real difference to business performance. So, Dan, we're going to take an opportunity here to ask the audience another poll.
Thank you very much, Gonya. So I guess the last 5-10 minutes, Gonya's been talking about all aspects of knowing your talent and knowing the position of talent in your company and your business. So I guess one of the things that's very interesting, especially from a HR perspective, is, do you know who your high potentials are using that data which you're collecting? So this one's a straightforward yes, no, or you're unsure. So do you know who your high potentials are using that data which you've got to hand? So is that a yes, no, or unsure? I'll just leave that up for another 10 seconds or so, just to give everybody a chance to vote. I can see about 75% of you have so far. Just a few more seconds. So I have just shared the results on your screen. So we've got about almost half of you saying that you do know who your high potentials are using that data. 40% of you are saying no, and then 16% are saying unsure, although it's hard to tell whether that's because you're not collecting that data or you're just not interpreting or analysing it. Guanya, what do you think from the way our audience have answered that question?
Well, I'm pleased to see that almost 50% do know who their high potentials are actually using data, but almost 40% don't know. So I think that's quite interesting as well, and highlights where there might be a bit of a gap. So from some research that we've done and looking at what Gartner has done some research into, high potential employees are 91% more valuable to a business than non-high potential workers, and they generate 3 times their total compensation for the business. So identifying and knowing who your high potentials are can really impact your business potential, and making sure that they're happy and compensated fairly is really, really important. So knowing and understanding that data, I think, is a key performance indicator that you need to keep an eye on and boost as much as possible, whether that's with like skills, gap analysis and upskilling people, succession planning. It's really important just to know that information, but I can talk a little bit more about that in the steps that we're looking at.
Okay, so I guess it's positive that most people they do understand who their high potential are, because as you said, it's over 90% in terms of the positive effect that they can have on the organization. I guess for those that not, I guess a takeaway would be like the talent management isn't just about knowing who your flight risks are and where the attrition risk is. It's looking internally as well, in terms of like people you can progress towards the top end, not just the where we're going to lose people.
Yeah, exactly. And then out of that, you can build your succession plans as well and upskill people to actually be able to be those high potentials in the future.
Brilliant. Right, should we keep moving?
Yes, so brilliant. We have talked about the context, and we've talked a little bit more in depth about people science, and now we are going to move on to our 5 steps to getting people analytics right. So our first step is people data. Now this sounds really simple, but actually it's not. And a lot of businesses don't have this first step covered off. So to make better informed people decisions, you need a complete and accurate view of every person in your workforce, so wherever they are. So as you grow, you'll need to manage a global and disparate workforce potentially. You'll need to maintain compliance at both global and local levels. So as we've all heard recently, GDPR is a really big topic. So are you adhering to those compliance regulations? You need to ensure that data remains accurate, secure, compliant, and as you grow and scale, your people processes need to reflect that. And building a strong data foundation, for powerful reporting and actual insights, is about having a single source of the truth and having confidence that your people data is accurate. So this first step is really about having all your data in one place. You're confident that it's accurate and you're confident that it's secure. So step 2, this is about people reporting. So do you know what your data is telling you? Who are your people? What are they doing? Do you have a true picture that shows what's happening in real time? So give your management teams the data they need when they need it. Ensure key decision makers have real-time insights. So we are in a technology era where we can do our banking from our mobiles and make pretty big money decisions on the go. So we need to be able to make sure that our management teams can really glean insights into data and make decisions on the go, for example, from their mobile, and get those reports and dashboards in a matter of seconds and minutes rather than days or weeks, which has historically been the case to get sort of this type of data. At this point in step 2, your data is probably pretty basic, but you've got all your basic information in one place and you can easily access it and you have real-time insights. So here it's really enabling your managers to just update themselves on particular data points, notifications, or visualize and prepare the information in a variety of ways. At this stage, it's about making sure they've just got easy access, basically. They can schedule reports potentially. It's just having that data at your fingertips. So, step 3, people analytics. So here we're going a bit more in depth. You're really exploring your people data. So you're putting aside time to find out not only what is happening, but why. So it's really, as Dan mentioned earlier, cutting apart the different bits of information, getting to know that a bit more, understanding it a bit more, but then almost putting it back together and really building a picture to understand why behind a particular outcome. So you need to ensure your teams have the context, behind whatever the answer is they're trying to get to. You need to give your leaders the confidence to take immediate action based on accurate information and work at speed. So by applying data science to your people helps you identify trends and patterns in your workforce based on accurate data and solid reporting capabilities. So a good example here, if you use this data to find a solution, for example, if you have an issue with high staff turnover, then look beyond the figures to find out why people are leaving. Is there a particular division or location where churn rates are higher? Can you talk to those managers? Or perhaps churn rates are higher among women than men? Look at the exit interview data and take stock of the gender ratio in management. Or is there a high churn rate in an area of business that requires highly prized and in-depth knowledge? Is it possible that people in this department don't understand how much they are valued to the company? So it's really looking beyond the numbers and just building a picture as to why something is happening and then providing actionable insights off the back of that. So step 4, people insights. Here we're really looking about valuable insights. So from analysis, can you help predict or test or understand the value and impact of potential people solutions? So this is really making evidence-based decisions instead of relying on gut feel. Being able to implement changes quickly and, for maximum impact. I think the important thing to call out here is it's about almost being creative and designing better ways of working and solutions. And by testing hypotheses and predictions, you can start to find almost innovative ways that you can change things within your organisation. Also, it's really important at this stage to obtain regular feedback. So what executives want to know is how these metrics affect productivity or profitability. They want to know whether they are particular areas of the business where these rates are higher or why. And above all, they want information and insight into what changes they need to make to change future outcomes. So not data about what happened in the past. While it's good to show improvement, for example, year on year, it's more important to be able to make an impact on the business going forwards. And this is why HR and people leaders keep their seat at the table with the C-suite execs, because they can predict the outcomes that are going to happen and prevent them from happening. And this is what's really most important to business leaders. So finally, step 5 is about people science. As we covered today, it's really adopting the concept of people science within the organisation. So data-driven insights are the best foundation for you to deliver better outcomes and prevent problems. So if you can prevent problems before they arise, you are really understanding your people better with stronger data and insights. You can prove your concepts and you can take action quickly. You can proactively manage and engage your workforce. You can easily link people data to business performance. And at this stage, you can provide great workforce experiences to improve performance because you really understand your people. And I guess the biggest takeaway from step 5 is that you have the ability at this stage to prevent people problems before they start, such as closing skill gaps or improving resources or succession planning, and having those high flyers, having those high performers, knowing who they are and developing high performance for the future. So insights from great data ensure that the right people are in the right place to do an outstanding job. From our research that I talked about, our HR leaders, when we surveyed them, said that 50% of them didn't think that they had the right people in the right job. So it's really about turning that statistic around and making sure that you do have the right people in the right place. So while changing behaviour among managers often proves harder than simply uncovering facts, many companies are using analytics to identify ways to increase engagement and or boost retention. So one company, for instance, found that its compensation was too evenly distributed. So this pleased mid-level performance, but leading high achievers to depart for competitors or different avenues. So what they did was they looked at the jobs that they had within the organisation, who their best performers were, and they made sure that they were compensated fairly. And this meant that they retained their employees for longer and they built better succession plans. Okay, so that was our 5 steps. And I think what I want to recap is this is almost a bit of a journey. So from stage 1 or step 1, it is just having all of your people data in one place and a single accurate source of the truth. We all know that pulling data from multiple places is inevitably going to have errors and cause your HR teams headaches that they just don't need. Step 2 is really about knowing and understanding what the data is telling you. Step 3, it's really further to knowing what you're looking at. It's about exploring the why behind the what. If you can spot a trend or a spike and work out what influences this, then you can begin to make informed and actionable decisions. And people insights is step 4. So this is about creating hypotheses that you can test and iterate quickly, which can really give you the opportunity to change how things work. And then the final step in the journey is actually using people science within your organisation to proactively manage and engage your workforce based on data-driven insights. So we're going to take our final poll here. Dan, can we ask our last poll, please?
Sure. So as Gwanya would have just taken you through, there are 5 steps to the people science journey. So what stage do you think you are currently at in your people science journey? Is it the collation of people data, so making sure all your data and information is in well, I shouldn't say information, really data is in one place. Then are you at the reporting stage? So you're kind of understanding what your data tells you. Then obviously there's the analytics stage, exploring, as Gwanya just explained, the why behind the what of the data. Are you at the insight stage? So creating and testing hypotheses, creating the grounds for an opportunity to change, or are you at the people science stage? So able to proactively manage people through those insights which you've gathered. So I'll just give you 10 more seconds or so. So we've got the first people data stage, people reporting, got people analytics stage, people insights, so you're at the final stage, people science. So I should have shared those results with you. So from your votes, it appears that most of you, so 40% are at the people reporting stage. So exploring what that data tells you, with very, very few actually at the people insights and people science stage. So kind of using that data to create genuine change to the management structures or the day-to-day utility of managing that company. What do you think, Grania?
Yeah, I think that's really interesting, actually. I think that's definitely not a bad result of the fact that at least we know that the people listening today have their people data in one place. They're using it for reporting and analytics. It's interesting that people insights and people science is really low. I think I was kind of expecting it, but yeah, it's nice to see that in real life, I guess.
I guess there's a lot of different factors in that as well. It could be legacy issues, or maybe stubbornness is the word that comes to mind, but maybe a bit of pushback from hierarchy in terms of changing the way things work, or listening to those in control of the data, maybe.
Yeah, I think it's also the skill sets that the HR people have. So they might not have got into HR planning to be a data scientist or analyzing data to that level. So I think from the customers that we've spoken to and the prospects that we've spoken to, that actually being able to interpret the data and understand the data is a skill set that needs to be developed within the HR space.
So this will naturally go forward in time, I guess, as long as people are aware of the recruitment and talent coming into their company and where the holes are, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so this is, we're almost coming to questions and next steps. So if you have any questions, please use the questions box. So imagine you gain key insights into your people by measuring and analysing what matters to your organisation. Imagine that these insights are actually used by your people in their day-to-day business and operations. And imagine that these key insights on your people then have a profound impact on the success of your organisation. So is that wishful thinking or is it a reality? So if you can follow these 5 steps, you are much closer to making this a reality in your organisation. And as we mentioned at the start of this webinar, technology is having a huge impact on the world and the world of HR. So human resource departments have been perceived to be slower to get on board with big data and people science. And it's not just a lack of forward thinking or not wanting to. HR leaders are facing big challenges when it comes to implementing HR data analytics, both logistically and then actually being able to interpret the data. I think for many HR managers, the idea of implementing people analytics equals letting computers decide whom to hire. So although the desire to be ethical by sidelining computers or technology can be looked at being commendable, remember that using all available tools to hire the right people for the right jobs in the right companies is the ultimate achievement for HR. So it's best for employees, it's best for shareholders, it's just better for everyone that they're in the right job doing what they're happy to do, what they're productive doing, what they're engaged doing. It's just better for everyone, basically, and it is the ultimate goal of HR. So you really need to understand what makes employees truly successful, which in turn makes a business successful. But human beings are still make the final decision, but thanks to data, they can make better decisions. Okay, so We are on the final stage of the webinar, so next steps and Q&A. Before we finish today, I just want to talk about using a system that can help you gain insights into your people. I'll point out it's not simply a case of implementing technology. So as we saw earlier on in the webinar, it's not about having necessarily the right technology in place. It's about working with that technology, working with the data, and really starting to think about how you can use technology to start driving some of the changes that we've talked about today. So a modern HR system that are not just HCM, that are HR and people systems, can focus on the entire workforce and can do things like enable you to completely brand your self-service portal, for example. The interface that your employees are seeing every day will help you drive brands through not just externally, your marketing efforts, for example, but actually by using the same branding internally, you can ensure your brand values and cultures are reflected across the organisation. And really simple things like a pulse feedback survey. So while you have lots of data at your fingertips in HR, it's about being proactive and asking for feedback and outreaching to your employees and asking them what would help them do their jobs better, or what they think could help them with their engagement or improve the culture of a company. Okay, that's it for me. I'm going to stop talking for a second and then back over to Dan. I hope you found some of the content covered today useful. Over to you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Grania. I hope everybody found that very insightful. I certainly did. I cannot iterate enough that at HR Grapevine, when we're hosting these webinars, we're only really interested in giving the platform to people who are, or companies rather, that are working to progress the HR function or providing answers, insight and knowledge around some of the key questions today. So Sage at sagepeople.com, I know have some of their own research around this subject, as well as a demo of their HR and people systems, HR and people system, which you can access. So if you head over to sagepeople.com, there'll be a lot more information, and I guess like free to use demo in terms of the utility of what Grania's been talking about today. So now to the next part. There is also a people science ebook which you can download, and there's the link which I've just been talking about. So if you head over to sagepeople.com, you'll be able to get the ebook, access some research and the system. Brilliant, trifecta of HR brilliance there. And now we can have some questions which I can put to Grania. She's talked through quite a lot today, so I'm sure there are some questions and I can see some in the system already. I know some of you have been using the question function on the webinar, so please keep those coming through. I'm going to start with one that we had towards the start of it, which is, you've mentioned people scientists quite a lot in the phrase people science. Should you be hiring people scientists to lead your people analytics projects?
So I think I did mention it a couple of times that this area of HR, and I'm not typically, this might not be the case for every organisation, but typically a lot of HR people might not necessarily work with data. They might not work with data or analytics or maths basically since school. So I think analytics is valuable, but it needs to be closely tied to business objectives and outcomes. And data scientists might be the best people to perform the technical side of things, but the process should be directed by business leaders who have a clear idea of what they're hoping to discover and achieve. So if you're under-resourced, it might be useful to get a data analyst hire onto the team. But depending on the software that you're using, for example, you might actually have that data at your fingertips. So if you've got a really easy to use dashboard, then you don't really need a people scientist to interpret that data. And it's really about looking at that data over time and looking at ways that you can ask questions and improve workforce experiences and processes and strategies. So no, I don't think it's imperative that you have a people scientist to lead people analytic projects, but I think it is really good to make sure that your HR and people teams are using analytics to drive decisions to the best of their ability, whether that's using a system that's got easy to use and access information, or they are still using spreadsheets, which is fine as long as they are gleaning some insights and doing something about it.
Okay, I guess off the back of that, we've had another question through, which it links so nicely to, do we need people scientists? It's like, do we need data at all? I think it's like a legacy mindset issue, which is we like to rely on our own instincts. Surely they're more reliable than data. We're the people on the ground. We know how the business works. So what do you think to that kind of mindset, Gonya?
I think there's a lot of value in gut instinct. However, it's much more powerful if you can back that up with data. So you can't really go to your CEO and say, I've just got a gut feel about John, who's one of our top performers in marketing, and I think he's going to be a flight risk, so I want to pay him £10,000 more a year. The CFO is probably not going to be happy with that decision just with no evidence to back it up. You need to be able to prove that the decision that you're making and your gut instinct is correct. And on the other side of that, maybe your gut instinct is wrong and the data is telling you that that's not true. So it's just removing that bias or that potential bias as well. So I think just being able to back up what you think is really important. And I think you'll get a lot more respect from your C-suite.
Okay. Okay, I guess as part of that as well, and you talked a lot about talent today and the high potential. What KPIs should companies be tracking?
So I think it really depends on what industry you're in, what you're trying to achieve. There's probably some pretty standard KPIs that people should be talking about. I talked about a few earlier. So duration in a position, absenteeism, I think is always something good to look at. Are you getting a lot of absenteeism in a particular department? What are the reasons for that? Anything that might cost the business money is good just to keep an eye on. Retaining top talent can be expensive. Filling new positions can be expensive. So looking at data to help you build and plan for successions or just talent planning in general. Anything, that can impact the bottom line for the business, I think is super important. I think it's also really important to measure engagement across the organisation. As we've talked about, knowing your people as well as your customers is a game changer. If you can make sure that your employees are happy, productive, engaged, you're going to get so much more out of them. And not only are they going to be happier, not only is business performance going to be better, HR can really prove their worth to that organisation and keep their seat at the table of C-suite and being on that exec and board team.
Okay, you're talking then, I guess, about internal talent there. And I think this next question is very similar to the first in this person asking, well, who should we hire to take us through this people science journey? Is it people scientists, or is it more that you just said it's looking at your high potential inside, maybe upskilling some people with the skill sets that are needed now to take through this, like, I guess, analytics and people science journey? What's kind of the best tack, or is it a mixture of both?
Yeah, I would lean towards maybe a mixture. However, I think it really depends on the resources that you have within your HR and people team. Do you have someone that's interested in that area? Do you have someone that's got skills in that area? Do you need someone with a bit more analytic skills because you don't have a system that can help you deliver some of that information in easy to use format? So I think you should look at upskilling your employees internally, but you should also look at the systems that you're using and make sure that can really help you build that foundation and help you interpret that data in a meaningful, accurate way to help you make those decisions.
Okay, I think we've got time for one more, and it's regarding I guess, providing people with the skill sets to use this analysis or to get involved with accessing people data? Is this merely just like an educational program, or is it more about a mindset as well?
I think it's a mindset. So I think it's a lot more common in marketing and in sales. So, you know, a marketing team understanding bounce rate on a website, for example, why people might be leaving a website and working out ways that they can improve that website to make sure that they get customers through the door. It's just as important to make sure that you're looking at your people data. But unless you're really using that data to make really important decisions that impact the business, then you're probably not going to care about data as much. And it is really important, as we've talked about today, because you want to make sure that your team's engaged and productive, and really driving the business forwards. So I'd say, yeah, mindset. And I think once you get into the routine of using this data and exploring the data, it can get really exciting because you can look at improving processes. You can look at really impacting your business's performance, which hopefully you get rewarded for. It shows that you're doing a really good job, and I think that is really important for HR and people teams to understand not only their people but their impact on the business that they can have as well. Training wise, I think it depends on how your data is presented, what systems you're using. If you're having to pull data from like 6 different spreadsheets and using crazy formulas, then yeah, you're probably going to need someone who understands that sort of stuff. But if you've got a nice system that can present some of that data, it collates that data, you know it's accurate, then it's going to be easier to upskill some of your people to interpret that data on a daily basis.
Thank you, Ganya. I won't press you any further. You talked through almost an hour. I hope that everybody listening found that very, very insightful. I certainly did. As you can see on the screen still, there is a call to action and Sage People's website, so you can get their ebook research and check out the demo of their system. We will, of course, be sending this out to you afterwards, so if you'd like to listen again to those wonderfully delineated steps of what the people science process and journey are, please do. So thank you very much from me.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
And have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you.
Cheers, bye.
Bye.